Flashing lights dance with fire in the night. I'm wired. Watch the time pass us by.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Kullervo is out, our newest Warframe release just yesterday. Also, if you believe it, this fashion was randomized colors. We did it live on stream yesterday, and even I was surprised. Now you can either pick him up from the market for 375 platinum or farm him from Duviri. It takes roughly 4 hours to farm enough Kullervo Banes to buy all his parts from Epitaph, so there isn't that much difference between time spent actually farming him or farming plat to buy him. Do what you think is best. The Kullervo fight and node only appears during anger, fear, and sorrow spirals, or 3 out of the 5. You can find them both in the exclusive Kullervo node, Lone Story, or Duviri experience. If you pick his node, it will cost 5 Pathos Clamps to enter, but you're guaranteed a confrontation with Kullervo at the end of the Lone Story Special mode. The normal Lone Story and Duviri experience have a chance to spawn as a main objective or side objective. It will not cost 5 Pathos Clamps this way, but you are not guaranteed a Kullervo fight in the run. Okay, let's get into what Kullervo is all about. People might think he's another melee frame. Yes, he has melee buffs, but in actuality, he's an everything works frame. The strongest part of his kit is his 3, because it's basically a damage spread ability. Pre-nerfed marked for death, if you will. This ability works with everything, be it spreading damage from a melee hit, a gun, or even other abilities. The only thing it will not transfer is damage that's not from you, so specters, operator damage. Do keep this in mind that you will not get any easy free last gasp revives with this. Therefore, this makes Kullervo usable for all playstyles, while preferring melee to get the full extent of his kit. As a disclaimer, melee combo counter is currently bugged as of the Kullervo update. You can spam heavy attacks forever, and the combo cost of using 1 heavy attack will not be removed from the total until you stop. This means infinite 12 times spamming until you stop. Yes, it retains full scaling, but it also means setups that depended on combo wiping mechanics and delicately balancing hitboxes, like the 12 times infinite combo Chlorophyll from before, are no longer usable, because combo does not wipe until much later. I don't know if this is intended, but all we can do is wait and see. There is one apparent issue with Kullervo though, his survivability, and the Overguard gimmick. He has 0 shields and cannot be increased in any way. This means he cannot make use of shield gate in general. Read, not that he can't build for shield gate, but that he literally cannot shield gate at all. He's basically a Naros in this aspect, 0 protection against one-shots. He has no good innate crowd control on his kit, only being his 4, but it's inconsistent, static in placement, and expensive to cast. He's similar to Saren in this regard, being a glass cannon and steel path that relies on killing everything before they kill him. Yes, you can build him for tankiness, but be aware this is almost required or investing into crowd control Helminths, because he has 0 survivability tools on him that make a difference alone. Now, it is very easy to subsume crowd controller survivability onto him because his entire kit also wants you to build ranged no matter the setup. His 2 grants Overguard if it hits enemies while he's at full health, but here's the kicker. While Overguard can trigger things like Arcane Avenger, meaning Iron Skin that is now Overguard can trigger it, and trigger other things like Adaptation or Arcanes that activate on hit like Arcane Guardian, etc., Overguard does not benefit from these. Overguard ignores all forms of damage reduction you have, ignores armor, and most importantly, does not have shield gate, or I could say Overguard gains. While you do get up to 5000 Overguard on Kullervo, it can be removed in mere seconds on Steel Path. Do not rely on Overguard to keep you alive on Steel Path. Rather, you can use it as an extra bar of unmitigated health to activate and proc other arcanes and mods. Overguard also does not make you crowd control immune like it does for enemies. Rather, all it does for players is make you immune to knockdowns. Because Overguard is removed so easily on Kullervo, I would still recommend using Prime Sure-Footed if you have it. Finally, Overguard damage is not considered health damage for Hunter's Adrenaline or Rage, meaning you cannot regenerate energy while Overguard is active. You also cannot grant shields or overshields to Kullervo via any methods either, be it pillage or shield pads. Okay, let's get into his kit. His passive has built-in 75% heavy efficiency to all melee, and also grants plus 100% heavy wind-up speed. This is most obvious on super slow wind-up weapons, such as Glaives with base 1.0 wind-up. Simple, effective, quality of life passive. Remember that heavy efficiency caps out at 90%, so if you choose to, running just plus 15% heavy efficiency will get you there. But how about his abilities? They're pretty straightforward too. Your 1 automatically performs a heavy attack on an enemy your reticle hovers over. It will also teleport you to them. But if you hold your 1 for half a second or so, a marker will appear where you aim. Now you can teleport to wherever this marker is when you let go. If you place it over an enemy, then once again you will teleport and automatically perform a heavy attack on them. Casting this ability also grants a flat, yes, flat, melee crit chance buff. It scales with strength linearly, so a weapon with 0% crit now has 200% crit for all oranges at 100 strength. Duration affects how long this buff lasts, but if you're playing melee on Kullervo, you will probably cast this ability somewhat often, meaning you don't need that much duration. The buff applies before your melee swings on the teleport heavy, meaning every teleport swing will always activate this buff before your damage connects. You can also refresh the duration of this buff before it expires. This is also his Helminth ability, meaning every Helminth can now grant melee flat crit chance buffs, or teleport to your heart's content. It remains to be seen how broken this can be for teleporting out maps, and to objectives or funny crit interactions. His second ability is the most basic and uninteresting of them all. Casting it draws out its 10 daggers over a period of time. They have a rather large seek radius. If you fail to find enemies for them to auto-home, they will stab Kullervo and inflict damage. Interestingly, this self-damage can activate arcanes like Arcane Avenger and Guardian. Because they consist of up to 10 separate hits, they can activate on-hit arcanes that have low % odds rather consistently. Anyways, if they do seek out and hit an enemy, they will heal Kullervo and add 1 to your melee combo counter per dagger up to a maximum plus 10. If Kullervo is full HP, he will instead gain Overguard. Overguard does literally nothing on Kullervo except as an extra HP bar that ignores armor and all sources of damage reduction. It has 0 synergy with anything else in his kit, and only grants you knockdown immunity while you have Overguard present. The 5000 Overguard cap cannot be increased under any circumstances. However, this Overguard cap is exclusive to Kullervo and does not apply to other kind of setups, such as Iron Skin. This 5000 Overguard gets ripped off in seconds and Steel Path, so you will still have to build Health Tank or Crowd Control and recommend to bring Prime Sure-Footed. Honestly, I wish they added an extra layer of bonus effects for keeping Overguard active for his other abilities, like how Gauss's abilities do even more when Redline is maxed out. Collective Curse is the bread and butter of every single Kullervo build. This ability works like Pre-nerf Mark for Death mixed with Bladestorm. It has no AoE, but it has no damage transfer cap. It is not limited to the total HP of the target and will spread all damage inflicted no matter the source. Therefore, damage linking can exceed the total HP of any chained enemy, hence Pre-nerf Marked for Death. It can also be considered to be like a portable Funnel Cloud Zephyr setup, where everything within range receives damage evenly. Hitting one enemy will hit all other chained enemies. Hitting enemies with AoE will make them cross-chain damage to all other enemies with quadratic scaling. Therefore, you can hit one enemy extremely hard to kill all of them, or hit them with an AoE moderately hard to kill all of them. Just like Funnel Cloud Zephyr. Also, unlike Marked for Death, this chain does not expire upon receiving a hit. Damage link per hit is capped to 100% reached at 200 strength and has a loose line of sight check, similar to Pillage on cast. However, the actual linking damage once it's applied does not have a line of sight check. You need to be able to see the enemy when the wall hits them on your screen. The 65-degree cast angle cannot be increased by any means, but obviously gets wider as you increase range due to how cones work when they project forwards. Duration is base 25 seconds, so it's mostly irrelevant since enemies should be long dead before then. There does not appear to be a limit to how many curses you can cast. It also spreads all damage, be it status effects, abilities, headshots. It does not care how the damage is created, only the final number. This means headshotting one enemy will spread headshot scaling damage to all enemies, but is still treated as headshotting only one enemy and not all of them. For the purposes of melee, hitting one chained enemy is counted as hitting all chained enemies with a generic melee, meaning every enemy chained will add to your combo count. This is important because it extends to status effects and unique weapon traits as well. While Molecular Prime and Bladestorm kills can activate Acid Shells and Vulcan Blitz from the ability itself, resulting in death, Collective Curse cannot do this. Chain deaths from Collective Curse is not considered dagger kills when you kill the main target with a dagger. It also won't count as hammer kills, nor would it count as Sobek kills. This means Collective Curse cannot activate Amalgamarganak, Metallonger, Vulcan Blitz, or Acid Shells in any AoE capacity. However, it can lower enemy HP enough that the AoE explosions could trigger it. This is also irrelevant because if there is so low HP that you can just keep shooting the second enemy, they will all die regardless due to the curse. More importantly, this means it cannot spread actual status procs, but rather it spreads status damage, but no actual procs. Quicken Spread status, damage. There's one interesting quirk to this ability though. It can build sniper combo without being scoped in on your sniper. The link damage will also include the sniper combo multiplier even if you don't scope in. This makes snipers potentially the highest weapon damage setup for single target collective curse setups. You shoot one enemy to destroy all of them with super boosted damage. Now I've not tested the extent of this yet, but it works on all snipers. As you can see, literally everything works with Collective Curse, be it your melee from teleporting your one, shooting enemies with your gun, or in a case I will explain later, AoE ability DPS. This is why Kullervo is an everything frame. His 4 is extremely simple. It does damage in an AoE over time on casts. It is by far the slowest ability on his kit, and whether or not you intend to cast this on a build determines whether or not you will want casting speed. The zone scales with range and duration scales with, well, duration. Damage scales with strength and it also force proc slash. This means roller would double dip the bleed scaling. Every single hit inflicted will increase your melee combo counter by 1, making it an easy way to maintain 12 times combo. Combo count chance on your melee will affect how much combo each hit this ability gives too, but no other melee mods work. Also, it is not considered a weapon, therefore Arcane Arachne and Vigorous Swap and Vex Armor yada yada will not affect this ability. Just remember that your 3 also gives combo easily. With a 4 active somewhere on the map and Kullervo's 75% heavy efficiency built in on his passive, you basically have perma 12 times combo. It's like a worse final stand in my opinion for actual DPS, because you cannot redirect it as needed and it is not considered a weapon. Therefore, Nourish and Elemental damage buffs and forcing crits have zero effect on the damage scaling of Storm of Ukko. It also isn't directional, meaning you cannot intentionally focus damage in one place like Stynax's Final Stand can. Case in point, it sucks at killing Acolytes, whereas Final Stand can do it easily. It procs slash every 0.5 seconds, meaning it camps out at 12 stacks before slash procs start expiring. This ability is rather subpar by itself and is more useful for the utility aspects of your melee combo counter, and requires casting of Collective Curse beforehand for it to really do anything that matters on Steel Path. If you're building Forest 4, then keep this ability obviously, but remember you have to cast your 3 first to do anything. If you aren't building Forest 4, I would strongly recommend subsuming this ability off. Alone, it lacks DPS and cannot crowd control areas properly. At least Kullervo's 2 gives you a heal if your HP isn't already full, and your 3 already gives you melee combo. Now for builds, let's get into that. I'm first going to show 2 ways to build them on base kit without Helminths, then stepping into more Helminth dependent setups later. The first build today focuses on interactions between his 1 and 3, letting you use any weapon in the game to take advantage of that despite helping melee builds more. Kullervo cannot shield gate and does not care that much for combat discipline setup since he will always be taking damage to activate any on-hit arcanes. He also does not care about enemy armor because many melees can slash well, or even guns, and this slash scaling can be spread via Collective Curse, even if the spread enemies do not suffer any actual slash procs but just slash damage, as well as your 4 being able to actually proc slash an AoE. Therefore, I opted for enemy radar to see where to kill enemies next. Prime Sure-Footed is here because as I mentioned in the Overguard mechanics section, your 2 is unreliable for preventing knockdown since it gets shredded off so fast. Range is king on Kullervo. This lets you teleport further, hit with your daggers on your 2 further, spread your curse further, and expand your 4's nuke ring. There's a limit to how much this matters, and I would say 200 to 235 range is enough. Beyond this point, radial increase benefits are nominal, and your curse already hits out to almost 60 meters on the cone. This is enough to cover one side of the room to the other, and pushing this further does not realistically allow you to curse more enemies. I would instead invest the spare slot into Survivability, which is a big problem on Kullervo. He does not have access to a cleanse, and status effects shred Overguard. So I brought Rolling Guard for iframe safety and cleanse. Adaptation is standard, and I combined Arcane Guardian with Blessing for his tankiness. That's 1875 HP with roughly 95% damage reduction once everything is active. Remember, this damage reduction does not apply to Overguard whatsoever. I should not need to showcase how to build weapons or melees for Kullervo. Do whatever you want, but keep in mind that any weapon with built-in healing, such as Haruto, Healing Return, Life Strike, Gloom Helminths, and etc. will make them almost unkillable so long as you keep fighting. Casting your 3 everywhere can get very expensive, so we slotted Prime Flow and Streamline. I tried to make a setup without Arcane Energize today, but if you have it, you can completely skip Streamline, and this worked quite well. Equilibrium will let you reap all the health orbs for even more energy, whereas Transient nullifies the strength penalty of Overextended. Do keep in mind you will want to bring Synth Deconstruct and Synth Fiber on your companions so that you can keep picking up health orbs even at full HP, or after Arcane Blessing caps out stacks. I do intend to use this setup with Madurai for Sling Strength's plus 40% strength buff. Alternatively, you could drop Streamline for Umbral Intensify if you're feeling lucky. Just be a bit more careful with ability casting at 100 efficiency and you should be okay. Of course, Archon Strength Shards work too. I did not feel a need for casting speed shards or natural talent, as his abilities are all rather fast to cast. Except his 4, which is not the focus of this build. You basically run around casting your 3 on enemies and kill them with whatever weapon you want. Cast your 1 for melee buffs as desired, and cast your 2 if you want for Overguard, but also as a backup healing tool if you didn't bring one on your loadout. The second build is geared towards killing enemies with your 4. You need much higher efficiency to do this because it has a base 100 cast cost, and you'll be spamming it. 170 efficiency was enough to get by, letting me save on 20% duration from not maxing fleeting. Your 3 and 4 still last long enough even at 88 duration, so it's not an issue. Your 1 applies melee buffs before the teleport hits, meaning so long as you bring a pocket melee to one-shot acolytes, you do not need to worry about them. You also do not need as much range since your 4 persists for a while and you'll be recasting all over the place. You also only care about enemies within your 4 being chained by your 3, so the 60 meter hitbox from build 1 is unnecessary. Strength is more important on this setup since it affects the dot scaling of your 4 while also the damage link percent of your 3. I'm once again running Madurai for plus 40% strength, but feel free to slot in red Archon Strength Shards to close the gap. You might also want to consider casting speed shards, as his 4 is by far the slowest ability on his kit, and without Madurai's power transfer plus 50%, this can get you killed. I would also recommend using Arcane Energize, because it really burns through your energy very fast spamming your phone like this. We basically gave up some range and max health for more strength and efficiency. Yes, you can build this for your 3-in-1, but keep in mind we lost Rolling Guard for Survivability, Comfort, and Prompt Flow, which would need blue Archon Shards to replace. On the other hand, Arcane Guardian and Adaptation are still extremely important on this build for stopping you from getting blown up. Synth Fiber is still extremely important on your companion for this setup because while Arcane Energize is basically 150 energy free every 15 seconds, casting your 3 and 4 still burns 52.5 energy. This is on top of if you choose to cast your 2, which is another 15 energy. I can guarantee you'll be casting your 3 and 4 every 5 to 8 seconds, meaning your base cast costs will consume all the energy Energize can give in that 15 seconds with barely any leeway for mistakes, hence Equilibrium to cover for those mistakes. Otherwise, you can consider Prompt Flow in this slot if you trust the overcap energy banking from Energize if you just go back to spamming melee with your 1 for a bit, when waiting for more energy drops. The only drawback of this Kullervo is how your 4 sticks in one place, does not provide any crowd control, and is expensive to cast. Therefore, my next build is a side grade to this for a more active playstyle, more movement freedom, even more survivability, and better infinite scaling. Enter Sunder Kullervo. Thermal Sunder can be more useful than Storm of Ukko for several reasons. First, heat procs scale forever because all stacks refresh duration when a new one is applied. This means while Storm of Ukko has a limit on how much damage it can do due to slash procs expiring, Thermal Sunder will keep hitting harder. Thermal Sunder also doubles in damage per cast, not total damage, but the actual cast damage itself. And this means that it scales infinitely even faster and can kill even without relying on Collective Curse. Of course, I would still recommend Collective Curse because it cross-chains Thermal Sunder scaling. This means enemies in Simulacrum take 5 to 6 casts of Thermal Sunder to kill. With Curse, it takes 1. That's a difference of 4 to 5 casts. Thermal Sunder doubles in damage per cast, so needing 5 to 6 casts means Thermal Sunder is doing 2 to the 4 or 5 less damage, or 16 to 32 times less damage per cast, but is still killing. This means that the curse is amplifying Thermal Sunder's damage by 16 to 32 times. This is proven by the 20 enemies in the Simulacrum, aka quadratic scaling damage. Our total damage output thus ends up being 20 enemies times 20 times damage scaling for 400 times damage overall. But that's not where it ends. Remember, Thermal Sunder itself doubles in damage per cast, and both Thermal Sunder and Curse damage linking scale by strength. And remember that Thermal Sunder is heat, and thus affected by heat inherent. This results in exponential damage scaling abilities, and allows Sunder Kullervo to kill every single enemy in the game up to level 9k without needing armor strips so long as you cast Thermal Sunder a few times. Your first cast has 400 times scaling after all against 20 enemies, but for counting any other damage buff sources you can bring. This is how a Sunder Kullervo will look. With the aid of Madurai for plus 50% casting speed and plus 40% strength, it's very easy to spam Thermal Sunder and retain full movement freedom, something that Storm of Ukko cannot offer. While retaining infinitely scaling damage, Archon Vitality will also let Thermal Sunder apply 2 stacks of heat per cast. Feel free to run a max rank version since Kullervo actually needs to health tank, whereas I don't care to max it. This build is actually very similar to his base kit, except I've replaced Streamline with Fleeting Expertise and dropped Prime Flow for Archon Vitality. I would strongly recommend using Arcane Energize on this build just like the Ukko setup due to the sheer spamminess of ability casting. Feel free to slot on blue Energy Max Archon Shards to bank more energy. You basically go around spamming your Heat Inherit Epitaph casting chains and double casting your Sunder to burn everything down. Bonus points for heat procs, also crowd controlling enemies through walls within a 28.2 meter radius. For a Heat Inherit Epitaph primer, use this build. Use the appropriate Bane. I don't have enough time to fully explain how Heat Inherit works in this video, but for a full explanation, refer to the pinned comment or leave questions asking. But simply put, heat damage scaling is extremely dependent on what used to inflict the first heat proc on an enemy. It uses the heat percent of your first proc and Banes of both your primer and DPS tool. Therefore, I don't care about the actual damage on my Heat Inherit Epitaph, I just want to load it up with heat percent mods and a primed Bane. Since our DPS weapon is an ability today, there's nothing special to mod on for Thermal Sunder, you just go strength and range. This lets Thermal Sunder benefit from Epitaph's heat percent mods and Bane, but only if you tag the enemy with heat procs from Epitaph first, which is why an AoE primer works so well here. For our fourth build, this is where we're looking at base kit but using survivability helmets. You probably noticed this build looks like my first build. There's a reason for this. First, if you're using a helmet that requires an augment, you can drop Prime Flow in the setup. Use Archon Shards to fix energy max as needed. Every single survivability helmet in the game wants range and some strength. Therefore, you don't need to change anything for survivability helmet setups to work as is on Kullervo. Feel free to tweak mods to your taste, but with this kind of stat splits, the following helmets already fit perfectly as a baseline and is enough for you to trial run the Helminth. Silence, an optional Savage Silence, Breach Surge, Radial Blind, Shooting Gallery with Muzzle Flash, Gloom, etc. Now, you don't need super high strength for Gloom if that's the route you want to go. For that option, replace Transient Fortitude with Normal Intensify. Replace Overextended with Augur Reach since we don't want super high range on Gloom as it freezes enemies too far away from us. Replace Prime Flow with Fleeting Expertise Max Rank. Madurai plus stabbing an enemy with your Parazon's Power Drain mod, and replacing Arcane Blessing with Molt Augmented will get you to 280 strength, which snapshots on cast for Gloom for 95% slow. You will have 175 efficiency for casting abilities, and 190 efficiency for active drain calcs on Gloom. So long as you have 40 duration or higher at 190 efficiency, which we have, Gloom will have a minimum drain at 1.9 energy per second. If you want better energy max, run blue Archon Shards. But yes, as you can see, every single survivability Helminth fits in well on Kullervo as is because he already wants to build higher range and some strength. Kullervo is another frame that makes anything you want to use work. He's satisfying as he is strong. Good AoE, good single target. Like Zephyr, every single target weapon becomes AoE on Kullervo, and every AoE weapon becomes even stronger. But unlike Zephyr, Kullervo's funnel clouds can be brought everywhere and spammed. The only thing he needs now are for damage reduction tools to apply to Overguard, or tweak his kit to offer more survivability, or enable extra effects on his kit when Overguard is active. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as possible, like I've been doing with the Duviri update and Kullervo's release. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.